Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. What comes to mind?
You are listening to Scream with Ryan C. Showers, the podcast for Scream fans just like you. Join Ryan every week as he takes a deep dive into the horror film series that defined the 90s and redefined the genre. Scream with Ryan C. Showers is your source for scene and quote analysis, character dissections, and the latest news about upcoming installments of the Scary Movie franchise.
I hear you like horror movies, Kirby, but do you like them as much as him?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Scream with Ryan C. Showers podcast, where the film critic meets the Scream fan twice a week, every Tuesday and Friday. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. So before we get started, I have a couple of announcements to make. First, I need to welcome new Patreons to the Scream with Ryan C. Showers community. They include Taylor Avery, Craven Something Scary, Casey, and my friend Brittany Gandy. Welcome back, bitch. So this past Friday was not a news segment. It was an audio commentary for Scary Movie. Now, I really wasn't like feeling this audio commentary, but the people who listened, who gave me feedback, said that they really enjoyed it. So please subscribe to the Patreon and listen to my perspective on Scary Movie, watching it live, out loud, and speaking as though I am like on a filmmaker's commentary. It's very cool to have like a Scream 2, I Know What You Did Last Summer, like perspective on the spoof. So, and it's also like the chance to not be serious, right? Whereas like most of this podcast is me being very serious and like really challenging and like grabbing the bull by its horns. And that's kind of like the hallmark of this podcast. This podcast is, the film critic meets the Scream fan in a lot of ways. So, but next month we are going to be doing I Know What You Did Last Summer for the audio commentary, and the following month H2O. So Scary Movie was like a fun little summer thing before we get like down to business. So head on over to Patreon and track it down. So since I'm now doing a Friday show, I've really been trying to like make the Friday show like a news show if the opportunity arises. And I didn't really get to cover much news because of the audio commentary this week. So I'm going to just touch on a little bit before we get to our main topic, our sensational main topic, I should say, by my producer, TJ Jones. He envisioned this really cool thing. You will not want to miss this. This is kind of like the entertaining event of the summer for Scream fans. So please stay tuned. But before we get there, I want to share some comments from people who are involved with Scream 7. Again, the most active composer on Instagram, Marco Beltrami, revealed recently to actually one of my friends, his name's Alejandro. He said, he asked him, when are you going to be finished doing the score for Scream 7? And he said late August. So there you go, which is very interesting just to know the filmmaking process. They finished filming in March, and by August, it will be completely scored, which is really cool. So the movie's going to be rocking and rolling, ready to go. And before then, let's talk about two people who were on the set of Scream 7, mainly, of course, our director, screenwriter, visionary genius, Kevin Williamson. He spoke twice about Scream 7 recently as he's promoting his new Netflix show, The Waterfront, which will be coming out this week, which is very cool. So he said, what I love about this movie, aka Scream 7, what I love about this movie is that we get to go home with Sydney and see who she is today and how she's raising her children and what kind of person lives through everything she's lived through and still manages to wake up and get out of bed and be a mother, to be a business owner, to be all of these things, and what she does when Ghostface comes. Okay, so before I go on to the second Kevin quote, I just want to take a moment and like sit with this. This is so cool. And this is what we want. This is the Sidney Prescott story we want. We want to see who she is when she goes home. We want to see how she operates in the world today after living through 4 horrific massacres where she was at the center of it and having this troubled past with her mother and having so much weight that she carries around. And like, how has she grown from that point? Who is the woman that we briefly got to see a snippet of in Scream 5? Who is she today? Who is she as a mom, as a wife, as a business owner? So Kevin Williamson kind of confirms that Sydney does own a business in this town of Pine Grove, which is interesting. He calls her an entrepreneur, which again, interesting. This kind of confirms this rumor that was going around that Sydney owns a coffee shop. And this was something that was floating around while they were filming Scream 7. There was, I will say that the production of Scream 7 has gone above and beyond in creating the town of Pine Grove. The images that you may have seen are incredible. They're ornate. They're over the top in terms of defining this town as a real place and as a place that like we would look at in Haddonfield or the original Woodsboro or Windsor College. So even more so to an extent. So it sounds like there's going to be a lot of exterior filming locations, which is really cool, especially because Scream 5 was not that at all. It was the COVID movie, and then Scream 6 pretended that Montreal was New York City. So, but there was a rumor that Sydney owns a coffee shop and that there's a big scene that takes place there in the town square. So that's very cool that it's been confirmed. Again, it's kind of surprising. It's not what I would have expected. So, being somebody who's so knee deep into Scream lore, I do think that there are going to be moments in Scream 7. We are all going to be very surprised by, ooh, I never thought about that. Ooh, that's interesting. Like sometimes it's just like we're so deep into it, like we can't see something that may be so obvious to someone like Kevin Williamson, right? So that was to Collider. Now to Screen Rant, Kevin talked about losing Jenna and Melissa. So he says, well, it was sort of, well, what's going to happen? After we lost Melissa and Jenna, and it looked like we weren't going to see the Carpenter sisters for a third movie, it was kind of a bummer. It's like, what do we do next? Then the idea to bring Sidney Prescott back and focus on her character and tell the story of who she is today, that really got me excited. He says that Nev read the script and she heard the pitch of the writers, she signed on, and at this point, he was just an executive producer and on the sidelines. And then he says that Nev called me one day and said, I think you should direct this. And I went, no, okay, I'll do it. So I love that. So cool. But, there was like a lot of, drama online about like, oh my God, he mentioned the Carpenter sisters, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's just like, oh my God, it's exhausting. Let it go. I think it's good that Kevin acknowledges, hey, they were a part of this franchise. Now they aren't. We're taking a beat to recognize that. And we're moving on to the movie that we created and not the movie that could have been, or not the drama that happened, 2.5 years ago. So I like that. Okay, so then David Arquette recently talked about Dewey's death. Very curt and honest in a way that he hadn't been before. So this is via Talk is Jericho. Okay, so David Arquette said that he was shocked. So he says, I was shocked. It was a difficult movie to record. I was very angry with the screenwriters, and I still am. They didn't even tell me when they delivered the script. It was a beginner's mess. Oh my goodness. So this sparked a lot of controversy whenever he said this, or whenever it went up online, that this had been said on a podcast or in a recording. And it's interesting because David you've always, like, if you have heard David talk about the death and you know the fact that he bought the Bozo the Clown IP right around the time of Scream 5, you could tell that he was grieving the loss of Scream, that he was grieving the fact that he wasn't going to have a part to come back to in the same way that Nev and Courtney would in the future. And that's sad, and honestly, like, I'm glad that he's being honest about this. I'm glad that he's talking about his feelings because like, here's my perspective. We have sat through of being patient every time Melissa or Jenna speaks out about Scream 7 or Scream in general, or expresses some kind of, attitude or something. And we're just supposed to sit there and smile and just accept every dig, every kind of bad vibe out there. So I think it's important that, David Arquette, who has 5 movies, should be paid the same respect to be listened to whenever he talks about his honest feelings as Melissa and Jenna do with their 2 movies. So I'm happy that David is being honest out there. So, okay, moving on. Next, Parker Posey has been, of course, out and about promoting The White Lotus and other things, yada, yada. And she was asked about all of the returning characters to Scream 7. And the interviewer asked her if she would be interested in coming back. And of course, she was like, oh my God, I would love that, blah, 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 blah. But then again, went on to float the idea of doing an actual Stab movie or creating the Stab movies. I don't know how I feel about that, to be honest. Like, I think Stab is left best in the universe of Scream and not out there in the real world. If they did a Stab movie, like, it would just be recreating Scream 1. It would basically be a remake of Scream 1, and it wouldn't be good because Stab isn't supposed to be good. It's supposed to be kind of a cheesy, schlocky movie, right? So I love the enthusiasm. I want Parker to be involved. I wish she was in Scream 7, but maybe they can have her, like, we can see some footage of Gail in Stab 2 or something in Scream 8 or whatever. As Gail's character further gets developed, we can go back to Jennifer. That's totally on the table. So, but I love her passion for it. I love her excitement. I love hearing people from Scream 3 especially talk about how much they love being a part of the franchise. I think talking about the franchise in a positive way and your status as a horror person in a positive way is always a welcome thing. So, okay, a couple last things. So it was announced that James Wan and Blumhouse now own the rights to the Saw franchise, which is very interesting. I'm not a Saw person. I did like Saw 10. But if you know, there was recently drama about the ownership and moving forward with Saw 11, and that basically it was at a standstill and the movie was dead. So this is actually very cool. So this new ownership and the fact that it's going back to James Wan is going to enable Saw 11 to be made. So that's very interesting. No announcement, but that's just the facts. It was also announced that Octavia Spencer is returning to a Ma sequel. So Ma is, of course, the horror slasher movie that came out before the pandemic. Wow. So that's such a long time. time ago, right? Wow, don't even remember that. So, but she's kind of an internet meme. She's very funny. It's a very memorable villain who isn't like a masked person in a modern horror movie. So I think that's so cool. And, she's an Oscar winner. So it's very cool to see someone of that stature wanting to make a sequel to a horror movie that they originated a couple of years ago. So I love that Octavia Spencer is back and bring on all of the memes, I say. So last things last. I Know What You Did Last Summer. We are very much on the heels of this right now. I mean, like we're T-minus 1 month from I Know What You Did Last Summer, the requel. And a couple of posters were uploaded to the internet last week. So there were 2 posters, and they were virtually identical, right? Like, so you have the first one, which has like the fisherman up top, the title in the middle, and then like the cast standing in scattered places. Think like the Final Destination 2 poster or DVD cover. Like that's kind of the vibe that it looks like. And in the first one, it's very bluish. It has like the same color pattern as the Scream 5, Scream 2022 poster, like that color scheme. But the characters are smaller and they're kind of standing around like with their backs, like looking backwards. And Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr. are at the front of the poster. I actually really like it. I mean, a lot of people said that they thought the color scheme was kind of blah, but I really liked that poster. And I liked the fact that Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr. were at the front and they had the new characters scattered behind them. Then they released a second poster that was for the UK specifically. And it was basically like the same poster, but instead of like the blue, they put white around the sides. And so it looks kind of like the Scream 6 poster, which I don't like. I think the first sign of trouble with Scream 6 was in fact, I mean, I guess you could say the first sign of trouble was the fact that Nev wasn't coming back. But the second sign of trouble with Scream 6 was that god-awful poster for the theatrical release. Yuck. And they kind of recreated that. Not only that, but also they swapped. So they put Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr. in the very, very back. You can barely even see them. And the new cast up front. And they, sexually objectified the one main actress. Like they, in the first poster, she was like fully clothed and like kind of like, you saw more of like her shoulder and like her jacket. And then this next one, boobs. It's just like, come on, like we don't need to do this. Like, so that was very disappointing and very gross. Like, also, why shoot yourself in the foot? Why release 2 posters? Just stick to one, commit to it. Like, so, but yeah. So Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr. deserve to be at the front of that poster, even if they are just the Nev and Courtney and David in Scream 5. They deserve to be at the front. So anyways, okay, one last thing. The episode you're about to hear is between me and my friend TJ Jones. This is his baby. Okay. So this concept, he has been actually asking me to do this for years and years. And then he became a producer of the podcast and he finally got like the oomph behind him to like really push through and make this happen. So if you guys like this episode, it's the What If episode. That's what we're calling it. And specifically it's called like What If Tatum Was the Opening Kill in Scream. So of course, TJ designed the graphic for this episode, but the Ghostface portion of the graphic was actually designed by Robert Bob the Artist Ludke. His website is www.bobtheartist.com. So Bob, thank you so much for giving us this graphic to use for this really special episode of Scream with Ryan C. Showers, the first of potentially 6 or 7 episodes where we would like to do this for each of the Scream movies, like a what if scenario. It's interactive. It's not just like a flat concept. Like it's not like it was pre-written. It's like TJ has like different pathways of like, if this happened, what happens next? And like he gives me options to kind of decide which path we're going down. It's very cool. So hope everybody enjoys. Thank you so much for listening. Now, before I go any further, I need to thank the producers of Scream with Ryan C. Showers. They include Ashley Summers from the Squirrel and Spud Shop. She and I host a Scream game every Wednesday on Instagram, so please check that out. I also need to thank TJ Jones, who comes from the Box Office Buds podcast. He is responsible for all of the graphic design of Scream with Ryan C. Showers in terms of new episode cards on social media promotion, so thank you so much to TJ for all he does. I also need to thank contributors Mark Harim, Mark Vieira, and Joey Velisi. Joey Velisi is the guy who writes the scripts for Scream with Ryan C. Showers. Episode 112, we wrote a Scream 7 script, which I read out loud, about the end of the Carpenter sisters storyline. And then the sequel to that was called Screams. It was centered around the legacy of Gail Weathers. That's episode 155. And Joey is currently working on the final Scream, which this is a product that is going to examine the relationship, the marriage of Mark and Sydney. Unlike the real Scream 7, this will feature Mark Kincaid as Sydney's husband, and she won't have a teenage daughter. Both of her daughters will be young, so it'll be much different than the real Scream 7 we're going to get. But that is going to be coming to the podcast late summer, early fall. So please tune in for that. I need to thank everybody over at Patreon. Thank you to everybody who subscribes to the Patreon at any and every tier. I'm an independent entity, so any bit of support that comes into the Patreon goes back into the podcast. Joining the Patreon gets you ad-free and early access to every episode, as well as the opportunity to join the community of the show. We have group chats across social media. In particular, Instagram is really the hub of the podcast community. More importantly, joining the Patreon is the vessel in which you would use to come onto the podcast, either in a one-on-one situation with me or a small panel. In addition, there's a guaranteed invite every month to a big group Zoom recording about a Scream topic. An exciting feature of the podcast is the audio commentary episodes. Every Scream fan knows what it was like listening to Wes Craven do the audio commentaries for the original trilogy and Scream 4, with Marianne Maddalena and Kevin Williamson and Patrick Lussier. And what I'm trying to do for my Patreon subscribers is I am going to be performing an audio commentary of a Scream or a Scream-related movie, one per month, every month. And my goal is to try to approach these as I'm doing deep analytical analysis about the characters, about the themes, about just general reaction. So it's something that I'm really proud of and I hope continues to be a cherished part of the podcast. So the commentary is available as a normal podcast episode for anybody to listen to like they would any other podcast, but it will also be available as a video watch along. So everybody, please go over to Patreon, subscribe to Scream with RCS. I would be eternally grateful. So I need to go through and thank everybody over at Patreon who is subscribed as a stab investor or a daddy/mama Ghostface. So the daddy/mama Ghostface of the Patreon are Carrie Tenney, Brett Janovich, Corey Wilson, and Stevie Shears. The stab investors include Allie, Amar Karim, Tamika Jones, David D., Garrison Nichols, Gustavo Mora, Jess Mariano, Joey Nobarini, aka The Vault, Josh Calamari, Josh Carr, Scream Queens podcast, both Josh and Justine, The Horror Project podcast, Justin Weir, Kevin Abner, Mark Vieira, PWO5, aka Philip Douglas, Quentin Harrison, and Sam Levy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scream with TJ Jones. I am your host, TJ Jones, and I'm sitting here sipping out of my Camp Crystal Lake mug as I've come to school Ryan C. Showers on all the things Friday the 13th and brilliance of Scream 6. Ryan, how are you, sir?
Oh my God, happy Pride Month, my bisexual king. How are you?
Okay, that guy's had that one in the holster for the entire month, just waiting to say it.
Absolutely. So, and also you missed a really great branding opportunity, which is Scream with Tom J. Jones. But hey, Tom.
Scream with Tom J. Jones. Yes, that was the very first correspondence we had. You referred to me as Tom via email. How far we've come, huh?
Exactly. For a listener's perspective, we are like the dynamic TJ and I have. So everybody, I don't know if you know this. TJ, tell everybody who you are.
Who am I? I am a 39-year-old straight married man living in Culver City, California. I'm a lifelong Scream fan. Grew up in North Carolina around Kevin Williamson and the film stuff. I started listening to Ryan cast around that time when you got to interview Radio Silence. I was a Patreon a few months after that, and then you and I and our buddy Josh Carr have been fast friends ever since.
But tell everybody who you are in terms of how you matter to the podcast.
Well, I mean, I'm your muse and your inspiration, first off. I mean, that's really how I matter. But other than that, I also do the graphic designs every week that come out for the episodes.
Besides slaving away for me like a Dom Top, where else?
I'm also from the Box Office Buds podcast. Give us a follow. We are a growing entity.
Well, listener, just for perspective's sake, TJ and I have, if you have seen the movie Gone Girl, he is Ben Affleck and I am Rosamund Pike. I think that is like the most excellent comparison you can make here. It's
been a minute since I've seen that movie, but I end up taking you back, right? As you're a bloody mess on my front porch. That does weirdly feel accurate. But I am happy to be on here as a voice to challenge the throne. Oftentimes, there's a lot of brilliant minds that come on this show, but I'm here to be the disruptor, and so I'm excited about that.
So, in other words, for Gone Girl fans, TJ is about to slam me up against the wall and say, "You cunt." And I'm going to say, well, I'm the cunt you married. So, anyways. All right. So, TJ, let's play a little game before you wow everybody with your idea. So, TJ, in addition to making the episode title cards for me, he's been doing other things. He's been trying to get me to do reels and TikToks and fun stuff. So, TJ is amazing. And I just want to publicly again thank him for all that he does for the podcast. I love all of the graphic design. Every week, he genuinely surprises me. Even when I try to micromanage him, he still manages to shock me with what he delivers every Monday night and Thursday night for me to post for the next episode. So thank you for all you do to contribute to the podcast, TJ.
Yeah, it's fun to just play around. You say Monday night and Thursday night as if I'm like turning it in last minute. I mean, generally they're in several days before the assignments due, teacher. But yeah, try and keep it fresh. Sometimes you need kind of a standard logo. Sometimes you got to think outside of the box. And it's fun to see how the people react. And it's dealing with Scream and all of its glory. So it's fun for me.
So I went in to play a little game with TJ because TJ, he established this cool thing for me to do on TikTok, which I loved whenever we did this. It's called smash, slash, or dash. And so if you haven't seen the video, go watch it. It's very cute. It took me a good hour to get it perfect because I'm not used to visually being published. I'm just used to my voice, and I can edit that. I could be like 60 minutes with Kamala Harris. I can edit that shit however I want it. I went to do smash, slash, or dash, Ghostface edition with TJ. I actually had another game in mind, but it was more X-rated, and I was like, Ryan, stop being so thirsty. Stop being so damn thirsty. Okay, so TJ, you ready to play smash, slash, or dash?
Yeah, can we just quickly go over what word aligns to what idea, because I felt like the one that you did might be slightly different than my understanding. So smash obviously means you're very much into this person. In my mind, dash means you're terrified of this person. You want no parts of this person. And then slash means you hate this person and you think you can kill this person.
So my interpretation was different, but your interpretation makes more sense. My interpretation was like smash, slash, or dash. Smash meaning like, ooh, love this guy, love this person, love them. I'll smash them whatever context, okay? Dash means like, they're okay. And slash is like, gotta get out of here. Anyways, so ready to play?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that. For me, slash means I want to get rid of this person. Dash means I want no parts of them. I'm dashing. Let's do this.
Okay. So Charlie Walker.
Charlie Walker is going to be a slash. Super unremarkable, completely unforgettable slash. Get rid of that dude.
Quinn.
Quinn, I think, was a pretty good highlight of 6. I'm also sex positive, living my life out here in Los Angeles, so I'm going to go smash.
Yeah. Mickey.
Man, my favorite. Yeah. Definitely smash Mickey. He's a legend.
All right. Ethan.
Man.
You know the right answer. Yeah, come on.
For me, it's slash. Yeah, because I'm not afraid of him, and I want to get rid of him, so we're going to slash him.
Billy Loomis.
Billy Loomis is a dash for sure. I don't want no parts of that guy. He's got a crazy look in his eye. I'm out of the door right now.
All right. Amber.
Oh, baby. I was just watching Nora yesterday.
All right. Stu.
Man, I love Stu. I don't want to kill him. I don't want to run away. I want to hang out with Stu. I'm going to do whatever the male straight equivalent to smash is with Stu.
Okay. Roman?
Man, first of all, I had these opinions of 3. Then I started listening to the Ryan C. Showers podcast, and the brainwashing started from the second I turned it on. And all of a sudden, I love Scream 3, and I think Roman's a top-tier Ghostface. I'm going to have to say smash.
Okay. Now we're talking, okay? What about Nancy?
Nancy. Help me with this, Nancy?
Nancy Loomis, Mrs. Loomis, Billy Loomis's mother. Billy's mother!
Come on, well, yeah, Nancy. My mind goes straight to Nightmare on Elm Street. Mrs. Loomis, man, you know what? I'm tired of all this slander against Detective Bailey, thinking that Miss Loomis is like, some Oscar-worthy performance against Detective Bailey, so I'm going to slash.
Wow. Richie.
Man, Richie's grown on me a little bit over the years, so I'm going to be kind and give him a dash.
Okay. And I guess the last is Detective Bailey.
I appreciate the big swing. I'm a smash all day on Bailey.
Well, the only person in the world I would rather marry besides TJ is Detective Bailey, so I can't fault you there. And what about Jill?
See, this is another part of that Ryan C. Showers brainwashing stuff. You know me in 4. We're like oil and water, but Jill is undeniably a good killer. But you know what? I'm gonna meet in the middle there. I don't want to kill her and get rid of her, but also I'm terrified of that girl. Mm-hmm. She's crazy. She's effective. She's scary. I'm a dash away from Jill.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for playing the game you invented here on the podcast. You're the first person to do this. Maybe we'll do this from time to time. But so, TJ, why don't you tell everybody what your idea for this episode is?
Oh, baby, here we go.
Time, space, reality. It's more than a linear path. It's a prism of endless possibility, where a single choice can branch out into infinite realities, creating alternate worlds from the ones you know. Ryan C. Showers and TJ Jones are the Watchers. They are your guides through the vast new reality of the Showerverse. Follow them and ponder the question, what if?
Here we go, Ryan C. Showers. Let's get into this. This is Scream 1996.
What if Tatum was the opening kill? So, listener, we are envisioning a world where we have like the same movie in a way in terms of like the same types of characters, the same, like, we're dealing with the same people, if that makes sense, and potentially a similar arc, but just we're changing up, like, what if this happens instead of this? So in TJ's mind, Tatum would be the opening kill. So what happens from there? Well, first of all, I have to ask you, TJ, what happens in the opening scene? Where is Tatum killed?
You're jumping right in and all of a sudden taking control again. I thought you were the bottom in this equation.
I am.
Let me steer the damn ship,
Yeah.
okay?
I'll be the sub. You be the dom. Bring
So
it.
here we go. If I may. What If is a comic book anthology series published by Marvel in 1997 that took a look at what happened at the mainstream continuity if certain points of divergence happened in the plot and what would change thereafter. It went on to explore the Alien franchise in What If, many Disney characters. It went on to become a popular show on Disney Plus for the Marvel animated world. But screw that kid stuff. It's time for the adults to have some fun. Today, on the Ryan C. Showers podcast, we will be taking the unpredictable what if concept and applying it to our favorite series of film. Starting, of course, with the original Scream from 1996, in which we will examine how the movie would have unfolded differently had Tatum been the opening kill. Okay, now Ryan, pay attention. With this altered inciting incident as our starting point, we need to establish some ground rules here, okay?
Okay.
So in the Marvel What If series, there's a character named the Watcher. He oversees all the variations of the multiverse. Well, today, you and I will work together, and we will both be watchers of what I'm dubbing the Showerverse.
Okay, nice.
Where ultimately you, Ryan C. Showers, will be the arbiter who decides what winding road we choose to go down. And for total clarity in this world where Tatum is the opening kill, Billy and Stu are still the killers, and they've hatched their plan for the same reason as in the original film. The point of this is to keep those core elements in place, but to see the domino effect what would happen if you change one thing, Tatum being the opening kill. One last note before we start. Scream is iconic. I'm going to say iconic about 10 times the course of this podcast. Please forgive me. Okay, so now before we even start, I'm putting you to work, Ryan. You have a decision to make that will be critical for our understanding the events of the Showerverse for Scream 1996, as well as being vital for those listening at home to picture our tinkered tale in their minds. Are you ready to make your first decision?
I am.
Okay, our first choice. Now, we've already established the point of divergence for this exercise will be the adjustment that now the character of Tatum Riley will be the opening kill rather than Casey Becker. But what you must decide is in your version of the Showerverse, does Rose McGowan remain the actor playing Tatum? Or in this multiverse, did Drew Barrymore read the Showerverse version of the script, still want to be the opening kill, and instead played Tatum, therefore having Rose McGowan play our Casey Becker in the rest of the film? So your choice, is it Rose McGowan as Tatum, or is it Drew Barrymore as Tatum?
Rose McGowan as Tatum.
Excellent. So listeners at home, Rose McGowan is playing Tatum, Drew Barrymore is playing Casey Becker as it was in the original. Okay, so let's picture that in our mind. And we're getting right to your first question. You started with this. How does this first kill happen? And this brings us to our second choice, Ryan. This is massive.
Okay.
If Tatum is the opening kill, then we cannot start the movie at the iconic pull in the back, swing in the front Becker house, right? We can't do it there. Tatum must be killed somewhere else. So here are your three options to choose from. Are you ready? So option number one, we learn at the iconic fountain scene that Tatum was with Stu the night of Casey's murder. And Stu seems to imply they were having sex as well when he says, yeah, she was. So option number one, the movie opens while Tatum and Stu are having sex at the Mocker house with his parents out of town. Stu goes to shower. Tatum gets a call from Ghostface, and much like in the original, the game on the phone plays out where Stu is the Steve stand-in and is tied up in the backyard. However, like a weird multiverse reference to Scream 4, it is more like when Charlie was tied up, as it's a fake-out, and it ultimately helps skirt the suspicion off Stu when he survives the opening attack to continue the killing spree. So keep in mind, this option is the only way we are seeing the Mocker house in your movie, because either way, Stu will either be the victim or a main suspect, and if that's the case, his parents are certainly coming back into town, and he's not going to be able to host that party at the end of the movie. So every decision you make is going to have a ripple effect through our whole story. So that's option one. Mocker house, Tatum and Stu are attacked. Stu survives, obviously, because he's in on it. Option 2. Tatum tells Sydney in the original film that practice ran late. Now, we don't know for sure what the practice was, but based on the almost cheerleader-like "bam, bitch went down" and her stylish football jersey, we're going to assume for the purposes of this exercise it was, in fact, cheerleading practice, right? So option 2, the movie opens with Tatum at cheerleading practice at Woodsboro High. And once the practice is ended, in a weird multiversal reference to I Know What You Did Last Summer, Tatum gets in some extra cardio, maybe some boxing, takes a shower just like Barry, and then after, she receives a phone call on her cell phone. And then it ends up playing in a similar way to Casey, and she's killed in the gymnasium in a multiversal reference to you and Joey's Scream 6. Okay, so that's option 2. Kills at the high school, Tatum killed after cheerleading practice, okay? Option 3. I mean, this is keeping it closest to the original. Tatum is home alone at her house, waiting for Stu to arrive, much like Casey. She gets a call on her landline. Stu ends up being the one tied up in the back again, like Steve. But instead of the parents coming home to find Tatum tied to a tree, it's her brother Dewey that finds her. Now, keep in mind, Dewey's going to be much darker in this movie anyways, as Tatum is the opening kill. But certainly Dewey finding her his sister hanging from the tree is going to have a much darker effect on his arc for the story moving forward. So just as a quick recap, those are your 3 options. Option 1, at the Mocker house, where we open with Stu and Tatum having sex, and then Tatum gets killed while Stu is in the shower and then tied up to seem like an attack. Option 2, we, much like the original film, did not do. We are at the high school after her cheerleading practice, where Stu is not around at all, which will make him a prime suspect because he's no longer has the alibi of being a victim. Or 3, closest to the original, at Tatum's house, where Dewey finds her hanging from the tree.
I'm taking the Mocker house off of the list. I don't. So A out between 2 and 3. I don't know. What do you think?
I would say there's more fun to be had if we go with option 2.
Number 2.
She gets killed at the high school. She has a little Barry from I Know You Did Last Summer, vibe going on, working out, shower, locker room, sexy, fun, gets killed. Excellent. So in this case, if we're going with option 2, Stu is not there. So Stu becomes the prime suspect in your version of Scream 1 because he does not have the alibi in being the victim, okay?
Right.
Which is super fun. And there's only going to be about 5 of these big choices. The rest of it is kind of just as we walk through it, okay? So stick with us, audience. This is going to be a good time. All right. So after that, we cut to Sydney, much like in the original movie. And we have Billy climbing up into her room. Her father interrupts to say he's going out of town. That all remains the same. Sid flashes his boobs. None of that is altered, right? But then when Sydney arrives at school next day, the difference here is the school is no longer just the place the media is. The school is the scene of the crime. That's where Tatum was murdered. So the police are even a much more dominant presence. Obviously, the media is in full effect. But she gets there, and instead of Tatum walking up, obviously, to let her know what happened, Randy, her new interim bestie, approaches Sydney and lets her know that her best friend, Tatum, was murdered after practice last night. Now, obviously, this wrecks Sydney in a way that it never did in the original version, as she was not very close to Casey. But we go to the next scene, and we're in English class, just like in the original, but guess what? That seat's not empty anymore. Casey Becker is sitting next to her in that seat. Casey comforts Sydney. She didn't know Tatum very well, but she's here if Sydney wants to talk. So while Sydney lost a friend in Tatum, she seemingly has gained a friend in Casey. And because this scene is more heavily featured, we get to know the English teacher a bit more. We'll call her Miss Carr. And we love Miss Carr. She's a no-nonsense kind of lady. She's very kind to Sid, but she's critical of the cowards who performed that act of violence against one of their own last night. Then, as in the original, Sydney gets called to the principal's office. And because we didn't see Dewey in the teaser, this is the first time we're seeing Dewey. He's very upset in Principal Henry's office as they interview Sydney, but automatically Dewey and Sydney have a closer bond. It does not take them as long to bond because they have this mutual loss in the sister and best friend, right? So they bond immediately. Sydney's a wreck. Sheriff Burke can see this, and he says, you know what, Dewey, take Sydney home. She needs to get out of here. She just shouldn't be at school. She needs to get out of here. So Dewey says, I got it, Chief. He takes her. They leave, okay? Now, do you have any questions? Do we need to take a pause? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Good.
Yeah.
You're still there, because, my God, baby, things are about to get interesting. Hold on to your seats,
All right.
ladies and gentlemen. You know what scene's next? I'm going to say iconic again.
Fountain. The fountain scene's been cut.
You think the fountain scene? You would think that. You would think that.
No,
baby.
Sydney, doesn't matter.
Look, this takes us to the aforementioned fountain scene. Only now, Sydney's not there. She's on the way home with Dewey. And Stu is in police custody, so he's not there either. So who does that leave us? Well, lounging at the fountain discussing the events that we're meeting these characters once again, it's Billy and Randy. These two guys who we've met briefly, they're on the fountain talking. And then passing by is Casey and her good friend, Christina.
Oh my God. Okay. Wow. Love it. Oh, wow.
They join Willie and Randy at the fountain, and Casey is distraught over what happened to Stu, and also informs them that during her interview they made her aware that she is a suspect. After all, the victim is now dating her ex. Billy is sitting on the end of the fountain upset, knowing Tatum's death will just be another tragedy keeping him from getting in Sydney's pants. Christina rubs Billy's back as he laments all that's happened. Billy subtly nudges her hand off of him, a weighted look between Billy and Christina.
Okay. Love it.
Now instead of the school bus, Dewey and his squad car is dropping Sydney off at home. He tells her he's there. If she needs anything, call him. Obviously, Tatum's no longer there to have the call. So the phone call happens between Sydney and Randy. Randy says he'll be there at 7 once he's off the video store. Everything unfolds the same. She goes inside the house. She watches some Gale Weathers. She looks at the picture of her mom. She falls asleep on the couch. She then wakes up to a call from Randy who says he'll be there soon. And this plays out much like the original with the call from Ghostface. And while Sydney is still cleverly busting Ghostface's balls, she's obviously doing it in a more toned-down manner and with less jest. You know, she is in a darker place. The attack still happens, and it once again leads up to Sydney's bedroom, right? But this is another change based on your decision. It's not Billy who comes in the window, it's Stu. Stu shows up freaking the fuck out, pleading with Sid. He's innocent. He loved Tatum. No one believes him. You have to believe me, Sid. He would never do that. And right when she feels like she is feeling empathetic and she can trust him, a cell phone falls out of his pocket. He runs downstairs. Sydney runs downstairs, opens the door, Ghostface mask, Dewey at the front door. And so now we cut to Stu in handcuffs, okay?
Okay.
Which brings us to our third choice, Mr. Showers.
Okay.
There's only two options here, real simple. The first option is it plays out fairly similar to the original, only obviously Dewey is much more serious, having an epic stare down with Stu, believing he was the one who murdered his sister, and instead of Tatum coming to pick up Sydney, Randy is the one who comes and picks up Sydney. Okay, option number 2, and this is a big one. This is going to change a lot of stuff here. Option number 2, while bound in handcuffs, Stu says a disparaging remark about Tatum. And our featured punch of the movie, rather than Sid punching Gale, now is Dewey knocking a defenseless Stu the fuck out while he's in handcuffs. And while it's super satisfying, it does mean that Dewey is put on leave of absence from the force, and for the rest of the movie is acting as a civilian rather than a man with a badge.
All right. I think I would prefer to go with number 1 just because I love the idea of the stare down. And that to me makes more sense than Dewey punching Stu like that. I don't know. No, I think that the first one.
Excellent. Great choice.
I love this. This is fun, by the way. This is fun. This is not what I was expecting, so this is fun.
And please feel free, I know you've been fairly quiet through the first 20 minutes of the movie. Feel free to jump in with suggestions, interjections, if you want to object to something, whatever the case may be. All right, so you chose option number 1. That's very exciting. That means Dewey's still a cop. We have cop Dewey for the rest of the movie. That's fantastic. Well, then Gale shows up to Sydney's house, and Randy has a much more pleasant interaction with Gale than you remember Tatum did in the original as they passed by and they left. So now we're at the police station. Because Dewey is still on the force, it did not get kicked off, he's there. Sydney is in the chair, very quiet, but inside the room, the sheriff is questioning Stu and Stu's father. The conversation happens very similarly. Stu denies everything. He was just going out after he was arrested. He needed to talk to somebody. Sydney was a close friend of Tatum's. That's why he went there. He didn't kill anybody. And in that moment, he turns after it's done and has a long stare down with Sydney. Now it's time to get out of there. So as they sneak out the back, Dewey is there to take Sydney back to his house, same way in the OG. Let's go back to my house. I'm going to protect you. You're not staying in your house alone tonight after that attack. She runs into Gale, and because you did not feature the punch earlier, we still get our Sydney Gale punch.
You can't fuck with that. I'm sorry. Like that is too sacred.
I love it. So, but this gets us to a really interesting point, right? Because now we're back at Tatum's house.
Without
Tatum's
her.
dead.
Yeah, Sydney's in her room alone. That's sad and creepy, even.
So we get an emotional beat with Sydney as she absorbs being in Tatum's room, sleeping in her bed, looking at pictures of them together, warning her friend, Dewey outside at their house. Okay, well then Sydney still gets that call from Ghostface saying they pinned the wrong guy, making think maybe Stu is innocent. Dewey gets there a beat too late. And in the morning, Dewey cooks Sydney breakfast and tells her that it turns out Stu's cell phone was clean. They don't know what they're going to do next, but she doesn't have to go to school if she doesn't want to. But Sydney wants to be around people. She insists she's going to go to school. So, like in the original movie, Dewey drops Sydney off at school. Gail approaches, and we have that same chilling conversation that I heard you mention in today's podcast with Gail and Sydney. It is an excellent scene, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe a top 10 Scream scene where they talk about Cotton, they talk about the book, they talk about what really happened that night. I mean, a tone that never quite gets touched in 4, 5, or 6, in my opinion, that is achieved in that original one that is so gritty and down to earth. But now I'm on a tangent. So that scene happens the way it does, but instead of Tatum pulling Sydney away, it's her new best friend, Randy. Come on, Sid, let's get out of here. Now inside the school, Sydney and Randy are by her locker talking, right? And then when this crazy, stupid student runs down the hallway in his Ghostface costume, Randy puts out his green shoe and trips him. He falls on the floor, and he's protecting Sydney. Sydney appreciates this. Randy doesn't let this clown get away with scaring her and mocking her in their school. Randy looks like the good guy. And then our favorite English teacher, Mrs. Carr, she comes up out of nowhere. She's not even mad at Randy. She grabs the prankster under his arm and marches him to Hembry's office. Sid, again, is grateful for Randy, and there seems to be a little something happening here with Sid and Randy, or at least in Randy's eyes. And so then this plays out the same. After that, she rounds the corner, runs into Billy. And it's a similar scene, but we're not talking about if Billy did it or not. We're talking about if Stu did it or not. Stu is Billy's best friend. Do you think he's really capable of that? The conversation still segues into their frustrations about the romantic life and his comparison to his mom leaving and her mom leaving. She still gets upset. She still splits. We cut to Hembry expelling the pranksters with decision isn't in the office just as it happens, and then we go to the bathroom. Gossipy scene with the girls, and then Ghostface attack ensues just as it does. So now we're back with Dewey outside. He's waiting for Sydney to get out of school. And this is the scene between Dewey and Gail, where they really start their relationship, right? And Gail comes at him more sympathetically. She knows Dewey lost his sister. And so instead of flirting with him, she tries to use that sympathy through Dewey to gain his trust in order to get information. But that boyish charm that attracted Gail to Dewey is gone due to Tatum's death, and sadly, in our shower verse, there's not the romantic spark that there was in the original movie between them. So as we move on, the school day is over, Sydney is leaving campus, but instead of being with Tatum and Stu as she leaves campus, she is with her new friend Casey and Randy, which brings us to our fourth choice, and oh boy, this is a consequential choice. Mr. Showers, are you ready?
I am. I just want to say I love the idea of Gail using sympathy to get at Dewey. Like, that's actually very manipulative and very Gail Weathers. Like, even more Gail Weathers. That's more like Scream 2 Gail Weathers. Like that type of manipulation. I love it. And
I love it.
Also, just want to just quickly say this. I think that the idea of like Billy defending Stu to Sydney makes complete sense, and also it also makes Sydney feel like, oh wow, he's still not on my side. He's even farther away from my side. Like he's not. I was the one that was attacked, and he's still taking his buddy's side over mine. I love that. So this is good. This is really good. Anyways, go on.
Good. We're cruising, baby. And now we got to figure out where the party at. Hey, Ryan, where the party at, baby? It can't happen at Stu's house, as his parents would certainly have come back in town after he was arrested. So here are two options for where this party is going to take place at the end of the movie.
I think I know where you're going to say, so I know where I want, but go ahead.
Option number one, Sydney, being even more radicalized due to Tatum's murder, and with her dad out of town, says she'll throw a party at her house to celebrate Tatum's life in a weird multiversal reference to the celebration for Wes and Five. Or option number two, I feel like you're about to light up with this one. Casey's parents are out of town, and she wants to throw a party at her house to celebrate Tatum's life and give Sydney a safe place to blow off steam, which will get us back to the iconic Becker house.
Becker house, Becker house, Becker house.
How fun would that be? Instead of having the Becker house at the top of the movie, now it's at the tail end of the movie.
And it's weirdly similar to Stu's house in a way, because there's the cornfields, and it's better than Stu's. There's a pool, they're much more there's actually even more opportunity for cool things, but it's also isolated too, like Stu's house, which is what Billy and Stu would want and need. So chef's kiss.
But if you don't think the pool was going to come into play, baby, you're sadly mistaken. Here we go. So back at school, word has gotten around about Mrs. Carr's biting remarks about whoever committed Casey's murder. So being that she's now a more featured character, unfortunately for her, our midpoint murderer is not Hembry in his office. It is Miss Carr. She's grading papers alone in the school library, which makes this kill much more of a chase sequence where Miss Carr ducks in and out of library aisles, much like a weird multiversal reference to Gale in the sound studio in Scream 2. Ultimately, we still see the mask of Ghostface in her eyes as Ghostface takes his final stab and kills Mrs. Carr.
I like it a lot. And that's very The Faculty, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We jump to Sydney sitting on the swing in front of the Becker house as Casey sits on the ground next to her on a blanket. So picture seeing this house in the daytime, which we never see in the original. Casey's on the ground next to her. Sydney swings in the swing. Casey has more of an outsider's perspective is able to really connect with what the truth might actually be regarding Sydney's mother and the skeleton Sydney's mother had in her closets. Even being more removed somehow is more helpful to Sydney in that moment discussing her past. And now we cut to the video store, and guess who's there? Randy, Billy, and Stu. But instead of Randy and Stu having a conversation, it's Randy and Billy. And they're looking over at Stu, who's hanging out in the horror section, and they're saying it's in poor taste for Stu to have been arrested and now hang out in the horror section.
So I have a question. What's, the thing that people love about Stu is his personality and what Matthew Lillard brought to it with his creativity. Just like the goofiness, like all the funny faces and the noises and the sounds he makes and just the general creativity. Whereas Billy Loomis, the greatness of Billy Loomis is written into the script, into the page. So what is his personality like? Is he darker? Is he scary? Or does he still have the Stu personality we all know?
Ryan, this is your movie, baby. What do you think?
I think that Stu has to have that, has to have his same personality, because otherwise we're just swapping out actors for, in terms of like, instead of Skeet Ulrich, we're having Matthew Lillard play the same beats that Skeet played in the original film. So the personalities have to remain, I think.
Opposed to being a dark and gloomy scary, Stu is more of a
creepy,
wild, unhinged.
Yeah, like the Joker almost.
Exactly. Great comp. So picture that, listeners, in your mind. This performance is a spark plug of electricity and terror in Matthew Lillard as Stewart in this version. So we're still in the video store. Billy and Randy are talking. And, instead of some random blonde approaching, we get Christina Carpenter.
Oh, wow. Oh, my God.
She walks up and she says, "What's that werewolf movie with E.T.'s mom in it?" Randy tells her what it is. And then Randy says, "Hey, we're having a party at Casey's house tonight. Maybe you should come." Christina says, "I'll be there." Meanwhile, her and Billy have a loaded glance as she walks away.
I like it. I mean, honestly, I would love to look back at Scream 1 and really be able to pinpoint who Christina Carpenter is. And actually, it makes a lot of sense, too, that Christina is creeping around Billy, especially in the absence of Sydney. So I'm into it. I love it.
Excellent. Well, it all happened because Tatum got killed first, because there was an extra few spots on that fountain because Sydney wasn't there and Tatum wasn't there, and those extra seats on the fountain allowed Christina to enter our story. Billy and Stu still do the same homoerotic intimidation of Randy, where they get on both sides. Then we're out of that scene. Now we have Dewey escorting Sydney and Casey around town as they buy supplies for their party. Dewey goes and meets with sheriff, finds out the same information about the calls going back to Neil Prescott's phone and about the anniversary of Neil's death. So they're on red alert. They think it's Neil, just like in the original. We have Dewey giving Sydney and Casey a ride back to their house. The sun's coming down. We do a nice little time cut. And now the party is jamming out, but this time we're at the Becker house.
Yeah.
All right? Dewey's out front by his car. He's watching everything go down. Gail shows up in her news van. Dewey says that he's about to go inside the party, and Gail asks if she can join him. But Dewey's much more reluctant this time, as his relationship has not really been advancing with Gail, but he agrees, and she goes inside. And this time, when Dewey goes inside the house, he's no longer cut down by Tatum's remarks. Instead, there's a bit more of a reverence for him, what he's gone through. And while Gail plants the camera, we have an interaction with Sydney and Dewey, where Sydney tells Dewey he's so different since Tatum's death. And it's kind of a creepy interaction where for just a beat, we think, could Dewey be a suspect? And then we see Billy in the corner. He's very moody. He's by himself. And we see a long stare between him and Christina. Casey then walks over to Christina. It's her house. She's hosting the party, and she's got a beer in hand. Casey has an extra beer. She offers it to Christina. Christina says no thanks. Casey is flummoxed. Christina, you've never turned down a drink in all of our friendship.
Oh, TJ, I feel like you wanted to do this episode just so you could rewrite Sam Carpenter's origin story more into the original legacy. I'm just teasing. It's good. It's funny. It's good. It's good.
She had to be pregnant before Billy died. It
I
had
know.
to happen.
I know.
Right?
I'm teasing.
He couldn't
Yeah.
have gotten impregnated after he died. It
No.
had to happen sometime.
Yeah, he was definitely hitting that right now. So, yeah.
Well, if you think that's extreme, Wait till about half a page from now.
Okay.
So then they're having that conversation. Someone from the corner of the party yells, "We need more beer."
Okay.
So here's your fifth choice, and I said the party was the most consequential, Ryan C. Showers. This might be the most consequential choice for you personally of the whole movie. Option number 1. Casey decides she has crossed the line with Christina and needs to give her some space as she volunteers to go grab more beers for the party.
Yeah.
Or option number 2. Christina uses the request for beer as an escape from Casey's line of questioning and volunteers to go grab more beers for the party. Ryan, you know where this is going. Your most consequential decision yet. Does Casey go get beer, meeting Tatum's original demise, and prevent Casey from being in the climax or potentially the sequel? Or does Christina go get the beer, meet Tatum's original demise, and prevent Sam from ever being born and therefore not being featured in the subsequent sequels?
Listen, I don't want to fuck with Sam's appearances later. I will let Christina live and Sam can be born. Casey Becker getting killed in Tatum's place makes a lot of sense. I think there's some poetry in that. Also, I think it's actually kind of cool for the person whose house it is to be killed. That kind of like puts everything, all bets are off. I feel like it's interesting the killer should, if there's a party like this, the person whose house it is should either be the killer or get killed. That way they aren't there in the finale as like the special authority. So I think that Casey gets killed at the garage.
I think that's an excellent choice, and I think we're very simpatico with her thinking right now. So, unfortunately for Casey, instead of going to the garage, there is a pool house behind the pool, and Casey goes past the pool. There's some folks hanging out there. She goes inside the pool house, closes the door behind her, goes to the fridge, and inside the pool house waiting for her is Ghostface. And unfortunately, Casey, played by Drew Barrymore, she got a lot more screen time in this one, but she still eventually ended up dead in Scream 1996. Now, our main suspect, Stu, arrives at the party, and the tone of the party shifts a little bit. Sydney polishes off a beer and she approaches Billy, a charged look in her eye. She leads him to a bedroom upstairs. And now the same tense, creepy scene takes place between Sydney and Billy, where eventually they become intimate. Now, Randy is holding court in front of the TV in the living room downstairs watching Halloween. An insulting remark brings him to his feet to discuss the rules. And when he gets to "I'll be right back," Stu has the same interaction with Randy. "I'll be right back," but it's not as funny. In fact, it's more menacing and creepy, as Stu, the one everyone thinks might be the killer, says "I'll be right back," fading away into the kitchen. Right then, Randy gets a call on the landline and finds out Miss Carr has been gutted and hung from the goalpost. And with that, the remaining partiers leave Randy all alone to finish watching Halloween by himself. Ryan, I'm glad you just took a sip because I've been dreading this part of the podcast for a while. But here we go.
Okay.
Everyone at home, hold your breath. And if you know this story like I know you know, this next beat is going to tee up something in your head that's happening later that is going to be a tectonic shift. We leave the house to see Dewey alone walking down the road looking for Neil Prescott's car. Then headlights are coming straight for him, so he dives out of the way, gets out of the way of the partiers, he rolls down the embankment, and by himself discovers Neil Prescott's car. Again, by himself. We join Sydney and Billy post-coital. She comes to the same realization about the phone call. It would have been really smart if Stu used his one phone call to call me to make me think it's not him. Billy can't believe it. You still think it's Stu. And right then, Ghostface enters, stabs Billy, and the chase begins. Now, it leads in the same directions, eventually out the window, but instead of Sydney jumping and landing on the boat, she jumps out and splashes into the pool. And as Sydney climbs out of the pool, she looks over to her right, and her new friend Casey's body is splayed out against the pool house, much in the same way she saw Tatum hanging from the garage. So, if you have anything to get in now before we start rolling, now's your time, buddy, because shit's about to get wild.
First of all, I really like the idea. Giving the space between like the main suspect and Sydney is kind of cool. I mean, I love the way that it is in Scream 1, of course, but like, Billy being the middleman between them makes a lot of sense. And like, so I just think it would be very powerful for him to have been killed there, if he was being this middleman between Sydney dwelling about the potential of Stu and Stu, of course. So I like it. Anyways, go on.
Well, in a different version of this multiverse, that's what happened. But in this one, Billy and Stu are still our killers as established at the top. Okay, so then we're with Randy. He's on the couch. Ghostface lurks behind him. Behind you, Jamie, behind you. We cut to Sydney, running through the yard, breaking through the fence, and bursting inside the news van, where now Kenny and Gail still watch the camera footage.
Hey.
Are you ready for this, Ryan?
Oh no. Okay, go ahead.
I've been dreading this moment, but look,
You kill Gail Weathers.
just bear with me. Getting to this part of the podcast, I fear that the podcast might just fold in on itself like a dying star. Our friendship could implode, or you might just drop dead in general. And so, to Ryan and everyone out there, I'm truly sorry, listeners. But if due to Tatum's death, Dewey was never able to be charming and boyish around Gail, then he would not be in a place looking for romance, which means he never would have gone to the van and asked her to join him on the walk, which would have left Gail in the van. Which means she's still there with Kenny watching the hidden camera footage as Sydney bursts in. So Sydney bursts in. Kenny, Gail, and Sydney watch along as Ghostface is lurking behind Randy on the couch. Kenny, trying to go for help, swings open the door, and he sees that the front door of the house is wide open. And that's when, slice, Kenny gets his throat slashed.
Okay.
Then Ghostface gets one stab into Gail's shoulder. Gail slams the door shut with all her might. Tells Sydney, crawl out the back. Gail holds the door shut long enough for Sydney to escape through that back hole we see her do. Ghostface swings the door back open, and a frozen moment as Ghostface and Gail are eye to eye. Then Ghostface leaps into the van, slamming the door shut behind him, and in a weird multiversal reference to Randy's death in Scream 2, the van window is cracked with a body slammed against it. Loud grunts from Gail and Ghostface can be heard. And then we cut to that iconic shot of the side mirror, showing a hand stabbing up and down, up and down. Wait. However, that hand is not wearing a black glove. that hand has nail polish on it.
Okay. It's Gail Weathers. I love it. It's wow. I was not expecting that. I was like, this fucker is getting his revenge on me for all of the mean shit I've said about Scream 6 by killing Gail Weathers before the end of before the first movie. So
returning back to the house, noticing the commotion outside the van, Dewey swings the door open to find Gail bloody and bruised, mounted on top of Ghostface, a knife through Ghostface's heart. Gail looks to Dewey and says, "I always get my story," as she pulls off Ghostface's mask and we reveal the face of Stu Macher inside the van.
Love it.
Can you imagine? Are you on the edge of your seat, people out there, or what? Ryan C. Shower fans on the globe are just locked in right now, baby. Let's do this. We're on the final stretch here. You ready?
I am.
All right. Gail, still wounded and beat up, crumples onto her back. She tells Dewey she'll be all right. He needs to go to get Sid now. Dewey runs into the house, gun drawn, but this Dewey is less timid. This Dewey is way more poised. So inside the house, we see a focused and disciplined Dewey, and there is an interaction with Ghostface, an attack. But it's a worthy struggle that ensues. It ends up in the living room. Ghostface does get the upper hand and uses the VCR to knock Dewey across the head and knock him unconscious.
Okay.
Sid runs into Dewey's car. The squad car has the same thrilling cat and mouse with Ghostface, who grabs the keys, disappears out of sight, locks and unlocks the doors, climbs to the back as Sydney escapes. And a few beats later, Sid runs to the front of the house looking for Dewey. Randy comes up behind her, claims he found Casey's body. Sydney does not trust him. She goes inside the house and locks the door. She sees Dewey's unconscious body in the living room, grabs the gun out of his holster. Randy bangs on the door. Sydney yells at him to go away. Right then, Billy comes spilling out from the room upstairs and falls down the stairs. Sydney helps him up and Billy gets the gun. He opens the door and lets Randy in. We all go a little mad sometimes. Shoots Randy twice in the chest this time, throwing him back over the table. Sid realizes it was Billy all along. They make their way to the kitchen and Billy lays out his whole motive and plan. And he knows Stu is dead, but that's okay because he planned on killing Stu anyways. One less loose end. He then puts the gun on the counter, pulls Neil from the closet, plants the voice changer on him, and feels like he's thought of everything. Then Billy, in a weird multiversal reference to Jill in Scream 4, stabs himself multiple times to make his wounds look real. Sydney watches on in disgust, tells him he's watched too many movies. Billy replies, "Don't blame the movies, Sid. Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative," until he turns back, only to find the gun is gone. And looking up to the front of the house, it's Gail, holding the gun, attempting to save the day, but the safety is on, and Billy kicks her back into the front porch, knocking her unconscious. Billy turns back around, now Sid's gone. The phone rings, Billy answers it's Sid, using the Ghostface voice. In a rage, Billy goes searching for her, then bursts into the closet as Sid in full Ghostface gear, stabbing him with the umbrella, much like the original. Now with Billy out for the count, it feels like it's over. Until Stu, still in bloody Ghostface gear, just without his mask, comes charging through the front door. And right as he's about to leap on top of Sid, Dewey tackles him to the ground and gets on top. He's got the upper hand. Stu is wounded. Sydney hands Dewey his gun, wants Dewey to take care of it. Dewey takes a moment, puts the gun back in his holster. and instead wraps his hand around Stu's throat, slowly squeezing the life out of him. "This is for Tatum," he said under his breath, and just like that, he squeezes Stu until he's gone. Then Billy springs up from the ground, punches Dewey in the face, and gets on top of Sid. He grabs the gun from Dewey's holster, points it at Sid. And then Gale stabs Billy through his temple, and Gale says, "Good thing a knife doesn't need a safety, you bastard."
Okay.
And with that, Billy collapses to the ground. And see, in this shower verse, there is no final scare for the killer. And we end our story with our epic trio, Gale, Dewey, and Sydney, standing over Billy's dead body. Sydney, in an attempt to make some connection, reaches out and holds both of their hands. No words are needed. They sit there bonding over everything that's happened and what they've survived. And finally, we pop outside the house to see Randy being wheeled away in a stretcher. Looks like he will make it to the sequel after all.
You deserve a standing ovation for that. Oh my God. So I have to say, it's interesting. Several things. First of all, I was expecting Randy just to be dead. So I loved the touch. I didn't see that coming. So good for you. You surprised me. That was, I'm not, typically I know where shit's going, but not that. So that's great. So it's interesting just how much the movie changed and Dewey changed by killing Tatum instead of Casey. It made his role much more consequential, much darker, much more serious, much more integral to the plot at the beginning, but also obviously at the end. There was almost something poetic about like Sydney and Dewey each getting a killer in the same way that Gale and Sydney get Amber and Sam gets Richie in Scream 5. Like there's like a divide, if that makes sense, like in terms of like, this is personal for me and this is personal for me. So love that. Randy, because Tatum is out, he kind of is the beneficiary of her absence, right? Because he gets to be the best friend to Sydney, which is really cool and nice for him and kind of builds him up in a different way. And since he survives at the end, that leads some nice seeds planted, right? For the sequel or beyond. I love the idea of Gale. People have talked about this all the time, right? This idea of like a killer being killed before the reveal and before the proper finale, so the idea of like the bloody Stu getting killed by Gale Weathers in the news van, it's so awesome. It's awesome for Gale Weathers as a character and as a final girl to really define her. And you really do give each of the trio a big moment of justice, of empowerment, of like taking control of the situation. And you define the trio really, really well. And you define it early as opposed to the way that it actually goes. The trio kind of naturally assembles, and by the time Scream 3 comes around, here you really make them into a defined group here at the end, and not necessarily in the Guy Busick way of the core four. It's more so just like we each did something huge here and we're surviving it because of the trauma here. I really liked it. And this was just fun. Like this is fun to imagine, and like it actually forms. It's mostly the same movie, but just we get to the destinations in different ways. And I love the idea of Casey Becker's house as the finale, and just to imagine like Stu bloodied from head to toe after being stabbed by Gale in the costume, but also Sydney dripping wet if she really did fall into the pool and being soaking wet and cold throughout the finale. Completely different dynamics, I think. So I just my biggest takeaway though is Dewey, because people often look to him as being kind of the joke, right? And here he's not. He's the opposite of the joke. He's a hero. He is the aggrieved brother. He is sad, and he's driving the movie in his own way, which is really, really cool for him. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it was a really fun exercise, because I'd like to say that I had a lot of that figured out before I went into it, but the truth is I didn't. And big shout out to Josh Carr. Josh Carr has been integral in bouncing ideas, a lot of these early seeds of would it be this, would it be that. He was very helpful in making all these choices and fun options to go with. But yeah, it's just a super fun exercise to go along and I literally went and watched the entire movie, as you would have to do, and you get to each scene and say, okay, would it be affected by that change of the inciting incident, or would it primarily be the same scene? And then when you get to the scene that would be affected, you realize that there are multiple options. It wouldn't just like easily be this. It could be this, that, or that, So then it became a thing of like, well, this would be a fun exercise to involve you, a Scream scholar, because it wouldn't be just me reading off a story, like, fan fiction. It would be you having an active role in it. And for anyone that doubts that there are many different ways this could have gone, just one thread, for instance, if you chose Casey not to die, Casey ends up lasting through the whole climax. You find out that her and Randy actually might be the one with the connection moving forward, and she's there at the end too. So every decision you made in those points, those 5 or 6 points, whatever it is, it has ramifications that shape the story that we got to. And you could do this again. And
yeah, I love it. And do you have this all typed out?
I have it. I have it typed out. It's kind of a mess of a 17-page document, but
Well, I mean, if you want, we can post it on Patreon, or we can do something like that. But so people can kind of read the different options too and play their own game. It's very cool, and I can't imagine the work that you put into this. So I just want to applaud you both for the writing of this and the conceiving and the thoughts you had to jump through, the muscles in your brain you had to use to get to this point where it all makes sense and is all logical, while keeping the spirit of the original movie. You did a really nice job, and you did a great job explaining it and conveying it to the listener here. So this was fun. TJ and I would like to do this for the other 5 movies, Scream 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I would like to do this over like the next year before the release of Scream 7. TJ, are you game?
The game. I'm absolutely game. And I would encourage everyone out there, if you enjoyed this exercise, throw out some ideas on what you would think a good swap out would be, incite and incident wise or otherwise, in the stories that could make What If Scream 2, What If Scream 3, What If Scream 4 super fun and lead to different consequences. So if you have an idea of one thing that could change that might just make a completely different movie, let us know. It might be the one we go with, and we have fun with it.
Yeah. I also just love the Christina Carpenter of it all. I think that like you did a really cute job, and like I'm very much reliving the moment of the podcast, which was Joey DeLisi's Scream 7 script right now, just because we're coming up on its 2-year anniversary. And like, so all of that is just hitting me like in like super like cool ways, especially because like you killed Tatum in the high school. And that is kind of where we have the finale of Joey's script takes place. So
that was an inspiration.
Yeah.
And that was another thing that just didn't, it was never a plan to put Christina in it. But when I got to that fountain scene, I realized half the people weren't there. And I was like, well, we need more characters here to fill it out. And then when it hit me, I was just like, shit, it's made too much sense. And it was so fun. And then when I realized I could kind of give her a little 3-beat arc and then have this consequential decision where Ryan C. Showers could kill Sam, it was just catnip for me. I had to execute it.
And for the permanent record, Ryan C. Showers did not kill Sam. Ryan C. Showers is letting Sam live on, and we get Scream 5 and we get Scream 6. And
for the record, I also knew you would not do it. So while I did have that separate thing of what would happen if Casey survived, I didn't put a ton of stock into it because I knew you were going to have Casey die. And that was the right way to go.
And I think it's just important, like, the idea of Casey, like, let's just say, this was the case. I think that her dying would have been so important. Like, I kind of like the idea of Casey and Randy becoming a couple and having like those seeds of romance. But like, for me, I think it'd be more important to kill one of the main cast. And to the idea of taking out the person whose house it is, I don't know. That to me just makes the situation all the more unwieldy. I don't know why, but I just really like that idea. And instead of Stu and Amber, whose house it is, that's, they're hosting the party, it's the person, a victim who gets killed. Like they're gone. Like that's just so crazy to me to be in someone else's house. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's super interesting, and I hope that everyone listening to it this movie, if you're listening to this podcast, this movie is ingrained in your DNA, right? So I hope that people listen to it and get those kind of gut reactions where they can't even quite put their finger on why something is affecting the way it is, but it's just like these images, these characters, these locations, these moments are just like so embedded in us that to kind of throw them in a blender and mix them around and see what comes out and have a different time, a different, experience with them, I think is just a fun thing to do. So I love that you're feeling things that you quite can't even pinpoint. That's really exciting.
Yeah, I love it. I love Gail's. I really love the fact that you gave her that moment in the van, and that Dewey got his moment and Sydney got her moment. Like, and the idea of Sydney and Billy being alone in the kitchen and him going through all that makes it all the more intimate, especially considering their relationship and the fact that they just had sex and Sydney lost her virginity, just all happening. And Stu's not there because, like, what Stu being there, I mean, like, it's great in the movie, but this idea of like Sydney and Billy just being them, I think is also a really cool and creepy thing that you conjured up here.
Absolute blast. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Where can they find you online?
I'm pretty much primarily on Instagram, and that is Jones Hip Hop, all one word, Jones Hip Hop, and I am part of the Box Office Buds. That's boxoffice.buds on Instagram. If you follow Ryan, he is such a sweet gentleman, and he constantly reposts our stuff. So if you follow him, you'll see us pop up from time to time, and this will not be the last time I'm on his podcast. It'll not be the last time he's on our podcast, so you'll be seeing plenty of us in the future.
Oh my God, TJ, TJ just called me sweet. He's in love with me. Oh my God, hair flip.
Take it easy. But we're not doing the what if of our relationship. We're not going down that multiverse, okay?
Okay, I've already done all that, so in my head. So, TJ, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Talk to you soon.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this segment of Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me for the Taylor Swift song of the day. I'm sitting here with my marvelous co-host, Ashley. Hey, Ash.
Excited to be here.
Please tell everybody where they can find you and your store.
So you can find me at squirrelandspud9 on Instagram. There you will find a link to my Etsy shop where you can find tons of pop culture merch, from Sister Wives to Scream, whatever floats your boat. And obviously a lot of Taylor Swift. And then you'll also find the Scream Game of the Week, which Ryan and I make every Wednesday, and people seem to really enjoy. And we have so much fun making them.
Ashley, what is the Taylor Swift song of the day?
So the Taylor Swift song of the day is one of my personal favorites. It is The One off of Folklore. The song came out in 2020. It is track 1. Fittingly. This was written by Taylor Swift and Aaron Dessner and produced by Aaron Dessner. And this song is kind of, to me, it feels like you're reminiscing about what could have been with a past love and realizing that it might not have been meant to be, but it was so much fun and you had so much fun that it would have been beautiful if it could have worked out.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is so, Ash, I don't know if you have the same sensation when you listen to Folklore, but like sometimes I listen to folk. The One and Cardigan are so upfront that it's like, you know, a lot of the hidden treasures are in the back. And then like I find myself like obsessing over like track 5 or track 7 or track 9 or so, you know, and then I go back and I listen to it from the beginning. I'm like, oh my God, this is so good. Like the 1-2 punch of The One and Cardigan is amazing. But like I listened to The One, and even though it's not technically like the best song on Folklore, it feels so fresh. It feels so beautiful. It feels like so adult and mature. It's like, you know, going from Me, which is like one of the last songs on Lover, to this is such a flash, you know? And I just think it's such a beautiful song. I love the instruments. I love the messaging of the song. Like this is really Taylor coming into her lyric mastery, in my opinion, like in terms of like the things that are sewn into The One. And I love just the general theme of the what if, you know? And I think that is kind of, it's almost a thesis of this album as she's kind of getting lost in these different stories. She's looking at the what ifs of her life. And generally, I mean, like, I think this is something that we all do. I do it constantly. Like, what if I said yes instead of no to this person? Not even about love, just about like, what if I had done this instead of this? And the song is about love, but like about like a relationship that ended or a relationship that you walked away from or didn't happen, and you getting to reflect on that and think about how cool it would have been, or you know, how nice it would have been if that would have worked out. And this is literally like something I do every single day of my life. So Ash, what are your thoughts?
I completely agree, and I do the exact same thing always. Like I'll see a post of an old crush of mine and I'll be like, oh my God, I wonder what it would have been like if things would have like worked out and we would have actually like gone on a date. And it's not to say that like I'm not happy right now or anything. It's just more like I wonder what that would have been like and how that would have worked out. And I like don't want anything to have changed in my life how it is right now, but it just is so fun to kind of like imagine what that could have been, even if you're like, oh wow, that would have like, once you like realize like we would have been at each other's throats or whatever. Just like thinking about that is really fun. And I love how the very first lyric of this song is, I'm doing good, I'm on some new shit. Because she's literally kind of introducing you to what you're about to experience, because this is a very different feel compared to a lot of her previous albums. I remember the first time I listened to this album, I was like, I need to like stop and like really like take a second, but I immediately loved this song. It's one of my personal favorites. I have like a pretty bad habit of only listening to albums in the order that they're produced in. Unless I'm like gonna like put everything on shuffle, like everything on like one specific artist or like a playlist I've made. But if I'm listening to an album, I will listen to it in order. So The One is probably one album that I've listened to, or one song I've probably listened to a lot, just because if you don't get through the album, you get busy, you don't have time to listen to the whole thing. I will start from the beginning again. I just love this song. Like, I love how she like admits like her faults. Like, in my defense, I have none for never leaving well enough alone. And it's just like, once you get older, there's like those little things that you might have been annoyed by or were pushing each other's buttons. And once you're with like the person that feels like your person, like those things just like don't really matter anymore. Or you become mature enough to be like, I know this wasn't an intentional for them to like piss me off. So like, I'm just gonna like let that slide. And if anything, have a mature conversation about it later. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like there's things that like I got mad at my first boyfriend about, who was a lovely person. And I'm just like, oh God, Ashley, like he probably was like, this girl's insane. But I mean, you live, right? And you learn through all of these relationships. And if you don't have the ones that don't work out, a lot of times you don't really grow. And I feel like this is a song about growth and learning. And maybe Sydney could think about Mark Kincaid when she's listening to this song.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that, but that is actually the perfect way to connect this to Scream. I mean, I think Sydney would go down this rabbit hole a lot in thinking about the one, or what if, what could have happened, what could have been. I was thinking about more so her mom, like, you know, what could have been if like her mom had been honest with her, if Billy had never, you know, murdered Maureen, and just what her life could have been without all of this. I'm sure she thinks about that a lot, but I love the idea of specifically like honing in, like, I feel like almost you could do it like after each movie, like Sydney going through the one song, you know, the song, the one, you know, if the events of just Scream 1 had happened, not Scream 2, she could have been with Derek. That could have been the one. Mark Kincaid, you know, she could have had an actress, a life being an actress in theater, right? You know, if the events of Scream 3 didn't happen, or, you know, yada, yada, or, you know what I mean? So it's very cool to think about it that way. And the thing about love stories, all love stories end, you know, one way or the other. So it's just fun to think about like the what if, what would have happened here versus there. So I wanted to do this song for this episode because the thesis of this song is, if one thing had been different, would everything be different? And going based off of what everybody just heard in the previous segment, I think it ties in perfectly with what we're going for with this new potential series that TJ has thought of, in terms of like, what if this happened and reshaped the narrative of the movie. So Ash, any final thoughts on the one?
Yeah, I've also listened to it a couple times, imagining Brandy listening to this in like Scream 2, like imagining if Sydney saw him the way that he sees her.
Mm-hmm.
And I also just want to say that Randy is a really good friend-zoned type of dude. He doesn't give off the vibe of like somebody like Charlie, who feels like he's like, well, I'm going to punish you for you not noticing me and not liking me.
Right.
Randy just seems like the type of guy who would like look fondly at this person and be like, I wish she saw me for who I am and like everything we could have been together, but also would have been happy for her if she's happy. And I feel like he was just kind of this sweet boy who liked the girl that didn't like him back, and we've all been there. And I feel like he could have listened to this just thinking about it. And I like to think of the what if we had him in Scream 3 and like maybe there was a little bit like more chemistry between them somehow, or maybe in something they had more chemistry, because I honestly think they would have been a really cute fit down the road when like he becomes a little bit more, or like they would part ways for a bit and he'd show up and he'd be a little bit more like built with like a little bit more stubble, and she'd be like, ooh, Randy, what are you doing here?
And after they've grown, like Gail and Dewey grow
Yes.
by living through all these things together. So it maybe could have been the one. Actually, this is a great Randy song. So
yeah,
I love it. So, all right. Well, Ash, thank you so much for this discussion. Everybody, please go listen to The One from Folklore.
All copyrighted material used or referenced in this show belong to their rightful owners and made possible by the Fair Use Act.
And number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.
Get another beer, you want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back!